year 2 of the LTP. So we'll open the meeting or reconvene the meeting at 9:48 a.m. All right, who wants to start here? Do you want to?
Do we have any apologies?
We've got apologies for lateness from Katarina Hodge and Mikhail Downard.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure, but Clive was still sitting on that whole briefing meeting, so I'm not sure. Is he online, Dave? Sorry. No, he was still sitting in that old meeting.
Does somebody want to?
So was I.
Does somebody want to send him a text and let him know to pull or to come into this, join this meeting? That would be great. All right, Mr. CE.
Look, I don't think I'll slow things down by saying much other than just a reminder that this is the meeting at which you make decisions on the annual plan for next year. There will be a later opportunity to set the rates, but this is the opportunity to have the debate, consider the feedback on the consultation documents and the submission and so on, and make decisions. Janine, you might want to just clarify any matters around that.
Nothing. Maybe we just flick on to the first slide, Dave, because I think that will guide us in terms of where we are now, how we got there, and where we need to get to next. So I guess in terms of for council, this process actually probably started back in December when we gave you a briefing on what was coming forward in the draft annual plan. We had our decision making meeting in terms of the draft budget back in February, workshopped the consultation document with that being approved in March, and over the month of April undertook that public consultation. Through that period, number of activities around advertising through a combination of print and digital channels, the consultation document, hard copies and online, face-to-face event in KAIAUA and Facebook Live. As the Chief Executive said yesterday, a day of hearings, both in Paeroa and here in Hamilton, and we are at deliberations today. Obviously, we have a backup meeting of a day available on Thursday if needed. And then from here, we're into the process of formally adopting the annual plan, planned for the 24th of June with a backup date of the 26th of June to do that. So just a little bit of a recap on where we've been and where we're going.
Nice roadmap. Well done.
Chris, was there anything else that you wanted to say? Okay, cool. So we'll get straight into it then once Dave's got his Coke opened. So in terms of this meeting, again, just reinforcing that comment in terms of this is your opportunity to make decisions. Obviously, there were a range of matters that were included included in the consultation document and presented for public feedback. The major ones of those being in relation to the simplification of our public transport rating across the region, also the introduction of the new rate for the WHAREKAWA coast, changes to our fees and charges, which is an annual process that we work through, and formalising the rates for emission policy for the primary industry compliance rate, which for the first year of application has been done through the general rate remission, but with a bunch of criteria set by council in adopting the long-term plan. Some other matters are obviously the consideration of the recommended changes that have been presented by staff through the Chief Executive submission, the consideration of the potential application of the prior year surplus, again a matter that was noted within the consultation document that you would address as part of your budget setting process. And finally, the approval of the overall annual plan budget, noting based on what is presented to you in this agenda, results in a slightly reduced increase in rates revenue from current ratepayers of 5.7% against the draft annual plan that was set at 5.9%. So I guess with no further ado, we will launch straight into the first topic, which is around simplifying public transport rating. So I shimmy to the side and Phil and the team can.
I think we've got a presentation, so can we do the presentation and then do a straw poll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This paper is to do with the simplification of public transport rating in the Waikato. So you'd be aware that as part of the annual plan consultation process, we went out with two options. Option one, which was every property pays the same, and option two was the same as option one, but with a capital base charge in Hamilton. So we had 118 submissions received on the proposal. In an overall sense from those submissions, 59% supported option one and 33% supported option two. Staff have gone through a process where we've looked at the two options that we've got on the table today. We have come back with a recommendation that we proceed with option two, and that's a capital-based charge. That's based on a couple of things. One has been the unanimous support for option two from Hamilton City Council that we heard about yesterday. It's also the fact that the majority of properties, I think around 74%, will pay less in Hamilton under option two. And the third point, I think, for us was that it represents the least amount of change in terms of rates for Hamilton residents. And it's consistent with how Hamilton has been approaching their rating in a general sense. The report that's been provided has a lot of detail in terms of the submissions that we received. Just to note also that of the submissions we received from Hamilton, so 79% of submissions were from Hamilton, 59% preferred option one and 36% preferred option two. So, Madam Chair, the report, I'll take it as read, but there's a fair bit in that report, but I would stop there and open up for discussion.
Councillor Strange.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Brian and Kim, for all your work on this. I really do appreciate all the time that we have taken to have that pre-consultation with our TA partners alongside the annual plan consultation process as well. I appreciate that staff have changed their recommendation from option one to option two. And given my reading and research and listening to Hamilton ratepayers themselves, there is a lot of pain out there with rates increases at the moment, and option two does provide, as you have said, that consistent approach, and 75% of Hamilton properties is a significant number of properties to be affected by a negative change. So I would be happy to move the staff recommendation of option two.
Do I have a seconder on that? I've got a mover and Councillor Strange, seconding Councillor Nebon. Did you want to see a straw poll?
No, I would like to understand Staff brought a proposal to us in our early draft and creation of the consultation document, which was to support option 2. That was overruled by council and that went out for consultation. The community, which is who I value, not necessarily the councillors, because councillors are quite good at telling the community what's good for them as opposed to listening to the community. And there's 59%, which it's not a significant, 80% would have been good, but 59%, 8% not knowing what they want, have said, we want option 1. And is this social engineering? Are we really into that? I suppose, maybe we are, but reality for me is, why aren't we listening to the community? And the community says they want 59%. So can I actually have an explanation? Because there's no detail in here other than Hamilton City saying that they want equitable, which is not the same as equality. So it's again making that, as I said yesterday, it proliferates the nonsense that higher value homes have wealthier occupants. That's not always the case. So I would like to understand why, and now that that's been moved and seconded, I would have moved in the opposite direction, but it's a direct negative. So we need to lose this motion that's now on the books to actually put option 1. So I invite my colleagues to actually listen to what the community has asked for, not necessarily 14 councillors or however many they have. Thank you.
Yeah, given that option 1 and option 2 are the same everywhere outside of Hamilton City, I'm really keen to hear from Hamilton City constituent councillors on this one. Councillor Hughes.
Look, I fully support what Councillor Noel Smith has stated. I cannot believe that our staff would ignore wishes of the constituents. 59% to me is a compelling answer. We've certainly accepted submissions with a lesser percentage than that. They've been carried by this council. And I just cannot see for life of me why we need to listen to what our constituents are telling us, go for option 1. But I'm just a lone voice around the table. I can tell you now I'll be voting against option 2. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, can I just note my frustration? I did indicate to Democracy Services at yesterday morning's annual plan hearings that obviously I was taken out of the picture for the afternoon session with my role as co-chair of the WHAREKAWA Forum, but I was told that the recordings would be available of that section of the session. I checked 7 o'clock last night, they weren't available, and again this morning, no recordings have been put up on site of that second piece. So if you'll forgive my ignorance on where we've got to with this process, but I originally believed that there was a possibility of option 2 for Hamilton and option 1 for the rest of the region. Is that not available now?
Option 2 is
That's
the same. Option 1 and option 2 are the same everywhere
For your
outside of Hamilton City.
Yeah, but my understanding was there was a possibility for Hamilton itself to be on option 2 and the rest of the region to be on option 1, if that's what some of the feedback was. Is that?
That is what option 2 is.
Okay.
Option 2 is a CV rate in Hamilton and a per property rate everywhere else.
Okay, no, that clarifies it. No, thank you.
And as I understand, the live streams from yesterday's meeting are on YouTube because I've seen them.
They're not accessible through the council website.
Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, I always find these things challenging because we get statistics put in front of us, but we do need to think about what those statistics mean. So only 118 submissions. Now, we know it's a fairly large city, Hamilton, and the proportion of people who are affected here that have submitted is extremely low. It's so low, be, in my mind, statistically not significant. I talked to my constituents, and I also very carefully went through the submissions that were made and noted the names of particular people who I knew lived in Hamilton. You've got some data on, though, that you presented on how many of those submissions did relate to Hamilton. Anyway, look, to cut to the chase, while I see that a majority of people, 59%, did support option 1, I think the City Council, as part of their process, are also talking to their constituents. I'm talking to mine, and I'm going to support option 2.
Councillor Graf.
Just, just on Warren's point, just to be clear, regardless if it was option one or option 2, everyone outside of Hamilton will be paying the same, regardless if it was either one. Is that correct? Hamilton
That's correct.
City? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Just wanted to be sure on that. Thanks.
Did you want to indicate, Councillor Graf? Did
Not,
you have?
no, I'm just waiting to hear. I'm waiting to hear everyone's answers. Thanks, and questions.
Councillor Nicol.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking to support the motion that's up because for some of the things that have already been said, which I don't need to repeat too much, but I did the maths really quickly, and 93 Hamiltonians out of the 190,000 that there are is, if I just round it, 0.05% of the population. And I have been around long enough listening to clever people like our Director of Science Policy and Information, who's got lots of experience around hearings and submissions, and says it is not necessarily the number of submissions, it is the merit and quality of those submissions. And I've read all of them. I've got a whole lot of notes of what Hamiltonians have said, which make sense to me. And what it really boils down to is that if you care about rates impact on low-income households, then you would vote for this to be capital value for Hamilton. I support the flat rate in the wider areas because it's a relatively small number compared to the 278 or so. It's in a different league, and it is for simplicity, and sometimes you want that simplicity. But when it is making such a big impact for 3/4 of the Hamilton population, that would be negative in the context of a cost of living crisis, the Hamilton City rates, which I'm sure the Hamilton City Councillors considered when they came to their unanimous decision, because they certainly hear a lot of it, then it just seems obvious that you would want to make a decision that benefits the majority of people. So I don't like the accusation of not listening to the community just because a 0.05% statistic is thrown about. I think that our staff have taken all the evidence into consideration with their recommendation, and that's where I'm falling at the moment.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, I'm supporting option 2. The idea there's a 59% of the 118 formal submissions support option 1 is because a lot of those people live in rural areas where option 1 will continue regardless if we vote for option 2, because 80% of the buses are in the Hamilton area. We're preserving the status quo and the way it's always been. So there's not going to be sudden rate rises in areas where there didn't used to be. So in Hamilton, and I think it's just logical to follow what the Hamilton City Council unanimously decided. They're split left and right, and if they all agree on something, we should just follow with what they want. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this matter?
Look, I just offer some in support of what I seconded, but I think that Bruce's point, Reece, the statistical relevance of those votes is probably one of the key issues here. Yeah. So
Did you? Yes, Janine.
Madam Chair, just another consideration for council in landing, depending on the outcome, around the current rate remission policy that is in place for properties with a capital value above 5 million. Under the preferred option and through consultation, which was a uniform rate, that remission policy wouldn't be required. Under option 2 of retaining capital value, I'd suggest that council does need to continue to consider some sort of relief for the highest value properties. That policy has been on the basis that there's a point at which the benefit does not continue to increase in line with the property's value. So that would just be another consideration. It's not reflected there within the resolutions, but I think it would be something that we perhaps need to come back to council in June with the revised wording for a remission policy. Just didn't want to lose that point through this conversation as well.
So on that point.
On that point,
Yeah,
Councillor.
so I was just going to say, I really agree with that, Janine. Thank you for raising it. We heard a few other things throughout the hearings yesterday about tweaks to things with the model, and I recall we talked about that there might be the need, once that things are implemented, to review them, and I think we've talked about things like annual, that type of thing. So depending on where we land with something like that, depending on where we land on exact boundaries for things, I think if we go into a cycle like we have with the fair review to be annual, then we can continue to refine this model to make it work for all the little things that might have been, still need some tweaking. Thank you.
Councillor Cookson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Totally understand where you're going with that. It'd just be where the fair number is to put that on the, because I'd imagine if where you cut that off, then that would go back to the bottom line again. So that there'd be a rate increase at the bottom again to, well, over the lot, everyone again to even that out again. So it'd be just.
So through the chair, we currently have budget provision for the rates remission and our annual revenue and expenditure. If you went with option 1, it would actually be a reduction because there wouldn't be a remission. So we do have that provision in there. It's a few years ago that we revised or took a look at the $5 million threshold. It used to be 2, but looking at the growth in property values, we did an adjustment to that. It's a judgment call there in terms of where you set that line of eligibility.
So how many homes in Hamilton would be exceeding $5 million?
So it will predominantly be your industrial, commercial. So I think some of the examples were the likes of the Te Rapa Dairy Factory. That was a case in point at the time that the remission policy was set up. Do they continue to get value across equivalent to the total rates that they pay, or does that sort of?
So it doesn't relate to housing at all. It's more. Yeah, it'd be interesting when you do that evaluation of should it actually be back down at $2 million or a lower figure completely. That's what I'd like to understand that in the future. Yeah.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Madam Chair, I just wonder if you've just confused us all. We're just voting on option 1 or option 2 now, and there's a subsequent vote on fees and policies. And is that
so
it's an implication
it's an
of
implication of this decision that's referenced in the report, because it does change depending on which option you go with. Right. If it's option 1 that's uniform, then there's current budget provision for rates remission that wouldn't actually be required. If you go with option 2, I think there's some simplification of the wording within the policy that we could bring back to you in June. Just don't want that to be lost in part of this decision making.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, Janine, I really appreciate your clarity around that and bringing that to our top of our minds as well. But I also have comfort that when we do look at that rates for emission policy, that that will have our full attention and we can get the best best outcome for all our residents. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. And I suppose when I'm considering this, like I say, I'm considering the feedback from the Hamilton councillors. You know, you're best placed to understand the constituents that this particular either option is going to impact on the most. And I suppose that I'm focusing in on, again, the unanimous support from Hamilton City Council. It's not often you get unanimous support out of Hamilton City, so I was really very impressed with that. And also just pointing out that with option 2, 74% of the Hamilton ratepayers will be paying less. So if we are concerned about the cost of living and the impact that that has on our ratepayers, that should be a considerable part of our consideration. I think. All right, we've got a mover and a seconder for this motion. Are all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Yep, we'll record that. Thank you. All right, next.
So we've got WHAREKAWA. Greg, sorry, are you presenting on? Madam?
Good morning, Madam Chair and councillors. Thank you. This is a momentous occasion for the WHAREKAWA coast, and so it's quite exciting to bring this proposal to you at this point, following quite a long, I guess, process for this community. And you would have heard from the couple of submitters yesterday the benefit that this new rate will provide. So just to recap, WHAREKAWA coast on KAIAUA is currently not a targeted rate area. We have been working with the community quite closely with Hauriki District Council and Waikato District Council in formulating a new, I guess, plan for the area under the community plan that was put together by all the councils and adopted by the councils. This is a subset of that community plan, and we were tasked with developing a new river and catchment rate for the WHAREKAWA coast area to help manage some flood risk on that community. So just to recap, Madam Chair and councillors, we went out for submissions with 2 options. Option 1 was a differential rate between the higher area, which is the catchment in the hill country, and also I guess a higher risk area, but with a higher risk near the coast. And so we received 22 submissions back from the community, including our stakeholders. In the summary of that, 82% supported the establishment of the proposed rate, which is great. And we had 8 submissions received from residents and ratepayers, 2 preferred option 1 and 4 preferred option 2, and 2 did not indicate. Noting that the stakeholders, including the district councils, did favour option 1, which is the staff recommendation. So the recommendation is that on balance, taking into effect the submissions that we did receive, we are proposing to proceed with option 1, subject to some refinements, which you'll see in your papers, highlighted by Hauriki District Council, where there is an existing land drainage area that has already been targeted rate for Pacific work. And so we believe that the simplified way around that is to demarcate that area back to an indirect rate, because they will still receive some benefit from the upper catchment work, and it would also preferred some overlap with the targeted rate that Hauriki District Council have already got in place. And so, yeah, so we'll leave it there, Madam Chair, and happy to elaborate and provide answers to any questions that might arise from Council. Thank you.
Councillor Nicol.
Thank you. Just a question, because our paper was going into a fair bit of detail on option 1A and option 1B, but was relatively quiet on the, like, should we go with option 2? Could you explain a bit more about that one?
Yeah, sure. So the question is around why are we favouring option 1, and I guess given that we had some feedback on option 2. So
Yeah, in context of the Hauraki
Context.
district
Yep.
issue and how we would resolve that.
Yep.
If it was option 2, for example.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I guess talking to staff yesterday, Madam Chair, we feel that by applying the differential rate between the high and low area, it is actually consistent with existing funding policies that we have with Waikato. Given that the administration base for this new area will be the team on the Hauraki Plains through the Paeroa team. We also believe that it better reflects the benefits received in those areas. So the work that will be done in the upper catchment will largely be around the, I guess, the retirement of land from grazing, stabilising the land from erosion, reduce sedimentation, of course, where that water will flow down into the lower areas, and it will also help improve water quality. The area with the higher benefit, which is nearer to the coast, will benefit from the river work in the sense that it will help reduce flooding by reduced sedimentation. It will also allow obstructions of debris and also provide clearer ways through the outlets. And bearing in mind that the key issue of this area is that the outlets have not been cleared on a systematic basis, and so they do require quite a lot of clearing because of natural processes with littoral drift, storm damage, and just the nature of the sedimentation that comes down off the hills. So we believe option 2 will not truly reflect those benefits between the two areas of the catchment, the high and the low. And I think it also simplifies what Hauraki District Council have highlighted around that flood protection area, which they call flood protection, but they will probably look at relabelling that land drainage just to ensure that the terminology is aligned, that it demarcates that the service is going to be provided by council. So while we will reduce the rate or the income from that 150, it will not have any impact on the overall service provided to that area.
Okay, thank you for that. I do like that there would be a consistency with the existing funding policies, and I'm very mindful that there will be the ICM funding review coming up anyway in a year or 2 or 3. And so my utmost priority is to get the rate in place. I didn't get we didn't get a lot of feedback from the community. I worked out, even just in KAIAUA itself, let alone the whole WHAREKAWA coast, I think population's about 500 people. So if all of the 8 from that area came from that town, that'll only be 1.5%. It just didn't give us a hell of a lot of steer. And so the aspects you're raising of how this is really workable, I think is a good guide. So I'd be happy to move the staff recommendation on this one. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Just
I'll
asking.
second that.
That shows consistency with our previous decision, Madam Chair, where we don't listen to submitters. I had to say it.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yes, just wanted to check with you. I heard you suggest that Hauraki District indicated a preference, but in the documents we've got, they didn't indicate a preference.
I understand indicated option 1 to support the 2-tiered rate. Yes.
Okay, it's not in our thanks.
No,
and I just wanted to say to councillors that we think we're important, and that we've had 2 years of work with this community, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent developing plans, multi-stakeholder groups, and an excellent consultation process on this, including digital campaign, formal letters to iwi, a flyer drop, a targeted Facebook post, advertising in the campus, meetings, consultation documents distributed to regional libraries and emails, and we get 8 people.
Yeah. When introducing a new rate.
So it's a bit, particularly when you're actually planning to charge them money. Well, which, and they probably did, the flyer drop. So Yeah, just on this, I think of the 6 people who actually made submissions on this, I think it's logical to suggest that those that are on the coast possibly are getting a better benefit than the ones higher up, because that's where the river work's going to be done. So it's on that basis I'd support option 1.
So just to be clear, this is the refined option 1. Councillor Smith, and I've got Councillor Mahuta, and then I've got Councillor Strange. No, we're shaking our heads now? No. No? All right. Councillor Mahuta.
I'll just say to Ben's kōrero, this is the third triennium with this community that we've been trying to do something. And they've been uncomfortably sat between 3 to 4 council, since then. So initially they wanted to know who to blame. That was 9 years ago. Then they got all the people they wanted to blame last triennium. So thank you for being the ones that they can find a solution with. But it was always going to be uncomfortable because it's the first time it's rated for. Mine would be understanding, so we're really clear because it's not noted. What are the, I guess, improvements? Can it be stated in the resolution? What are the enhancements? Just so that there's no mythology around it. On river management.
River management program, yeah. So it's a new river management program for the WHAREKAWA coast.
It's river and catchment.
River and catchment, yes.
Management.
Yeah.
We can pop that in, it's fine.
Yeah, just for specificity, I totally support it, but just so no one
That's
dreams
help.
up other things that we don't been thinking of. Thank you.
And just to clarify, it's only 150,000.
All right. I've got Councillor Kneebone, and then Councillor Marr, Councillor Nicol, and Councillor Cookson.
Yeah, it's just a quick comment. The other positive, well, for me anyway, this two-tiered approach is that it helps reflect the true costs of some of those lower lying farm operations, and so yeah, future buyers know what they're getting into, all that sort of stuff.
Councillor Marr.
Thank you. Yeah, just to note that obviously Frank Raweri spoke on behalf of the local marae trust, so there were a lot more people involved in that submission than may see as a sort of a pro forma submission. But yeah, so just that note that was raised yesterday, indicating that there were up to 3,000 shareholders as part of some of their land holdings. Thank you.
Councillor Nicol.
Thanks. Yeah, actually, thank you for raising that, Warren. I mean, I and you and Councillor Dunbar-Smith have gotten to know Gay and Frank quite well through the process of the last few years. And I'm more than happy to call them to explain, why it might be slightly different to, they showed up in person and gave us a submission. And so I'm really mindful of their preference. But at the same time, I'm really keen to get the rate set up at all, knowing that there are reviews coming of it anyway. I just want us to thank the whole council for their endorsement of the community plan to originally, get this community up and having one. And then obviously here that we've gotten to this point of having this rate discussed as the first action for regional council to implement that plan. Really appreciative. Thanks.
And Councillor Cookson.
I'm just happy to support option 1.
All right. Yep.
I just wanted to clarify item 3. When I read that, although I've seconded this, I still struggle to understand exactly what it means there. Well, I'm just saying that.
Yep.
Well, no. The council note the consequential reduction in rates revenue is 14,490 per annum. The program, what exactly are we defining there? It seems to me we've got That's the admin part of it, is it?
Yep, yes. Well, actually, through you, Madam Chair, so what that is highlighting is that because we're taking a direct rated area to indirect, we're collecting less rate from that area, so there's going to be less collected in, but it means we're not going to be subject to doing physical work in that area.
That's the amendment
Correct.
from the Hauraki district.
Yeah, correct.
Maybe we could just include that if you thought as per the amendment. You're happy with it? Okay. Thank you.
All right, we've got a mover and a seconder for this. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Nice, carried. All
Madam Chair, I
right.
just wanted to acknowledge the teamwork that's gone into this too.
Absolutely.
Behind the scenes, so well done to the team. And thank you
Yes.
for council support.
Absolutely. Well done to the team, because as Councillor Mahuta pointed out, this has been a long conversation and at times a very painful conversation, and we're all aware of that. And so thank you for everyone who persevered and worked with the community to come up with an outcome that that is acceptable and maps out a way forward. So kudos. Okay.
It's me.
Is this you again?
That's me.
Nice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next decision is in relation to the rates remission policy in relation to the primary industry compliance rate. I guess just to note that this was really the formalising of some provisions that Council had already set in adopting its long-term plan budget to make sure that the new rating mechanism was applied fairly and equitably. So the provisions within this rates remission policy have been applied in the current year anyway, but under our general remission policy, this is really formalising it into its standalone policy. As noted, 82% of submissions were in support, so recommendation is to proceed.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'll move that, Madam Chair, if I may. When we discussed this rate last year, it drew a lot of comment from around the region and the feedback we got. And so we moved in this direction. So I think this is just a natural progression of where we should be. So happy to move it. Thank you.
Just want to sure I understand what's going on. What is this? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to second it. And I just wanted to note, though, that during the submission process, what we heard from rural people was that actually there were other elements of rates remission that we don't, we're formalising something we did as part of the LTP, but we did hear some very interesting commentary from submitters on other aspects of work that they do on their land that perhaps we might be considering for the future for rates remission. Thank you.
Councillor Kneebone.
Yeah, and I think too, the vibes I got from Alistair yesterday were rates for remission was one potential tool for that council could use. There's other ones too, and I got the vibes he was quite interested in being part of the conversation. So.
Any other comments on this particular motion that's before us? No? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Yeah. All right.
So this is really another reasonably procedural process that we go through every year in the setting of our fees and charges, probably predominantly in relation to regulatory services and information gathering. So they get adjusted year on year in response to the underlying cost drivers. a handful of submissions received on these, but staff recommendation is to adopt the schedule of fees and charges as contained in the consultation process.
All right. I do want to, just because there's other parts in the staff recommendation that I think there might be more conversation around, I'd like to take care of this one separate before we go on to things like the CE submission. All right. Just to keep it nice and clear. Do I have a mover for the fees and charges?
Yep, happy to move.
Councillor Nicol, do I have a second? Was that Councillor Mahuta? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. It was a loud voice. It was a loud and proud voice. All right. So what I would like to do, councillors, for the next items is I'd like us to work our way through each of the aspects of it and ask all of our questions and get some things out there. And then I'm going to suggest we then take a break before we do any final votes. All right? Sound good? Great. Just trying to do a roadmap like our fabulous Janine did for us earlier. All right, Janine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this slide really just summarises the overall position as is reported in the CE submission, noting that from the subsequent review of the budgets that staff have done since the draft was adopted in February, some savings or reductions have been found and identified that result in a reduction in the total rates revenue required of 678,000 net. So there's some ups and downs within that. That 678,000 means that the increase in rates revenue from current ratepayers would reduce to 5.4%. All of the items in the report. So there are things such as the contribution, so the bringing in-house of the plant pest officers.
Yeah.
It's all of those. The whangamareno Waikato consent monitoring officer, that type of thing. So all of that detail that's included
So it's included.
From
So
page
so the
45.
Yeah.
Page 45 of your agenda has got the CE submission included there. Outside of those matters that staff have identified, we have included within the CE submission 2 changes that are in response to either previous council resolutions or currently proposed KPIs for the chief executive for the coming year that potentially carry with them a cost depending on the approval process for those. So the 150,000 is around the KPI for development of an energy strategy, and the 250,000 in response to council's resolution in February to investigate the establishment of an R&D fund to support innovation for flood protection and control work specifically. If those 2 items are added in, that would bring us to 5.7% against the 5.9%.
Janine,
Chris,
can I just clarify that the KPIs, they're proposed and they're going to be coming to council next week for a final decision. One of the proposed ones, which relates to the energy strategy, is contingent on the decision of the 150,000, or it won't be a KPI. That's the recommendation coming from CERC to council next week.
As I think the work by staff after that 250 for the research and development has the suggestion, I believe, is that it be widened to not just flood protection, but across the whole organisation. So can we just get clarity on that before we go too much further? Because I think being wider is probably has longer term benefits to council should it want to do something.
Yeah, so it's,
Can I just clarify that as well? We've seen previously there were two options. One is the wider research and development fund, and then separately out of the surplus, a water siphon trial for 250. We just need to clarify which one we're talking about here.
Yeah, so just to make it clear, previously council had asked us to go and have a look at a research and development fund for flood protection and drainage purposes. In looking at it, staff have come to the view that if council were to look at a research and development fund, which is, I think Janine refers to as an opportunities fund, it would be better being a council-wide matter that could apply to any of council's business, not just in the flood management and protection and drainage area. And so that's what staff have come back with. If you wanted to do it, would suggest that you put money aside into a fund. And Janine might be able to talk to this a bit more. There would need to be pretty clear criteria if you were going to go ahead with this about how this would occur, and that there would need to be business cases that would come. We don't want to be in the position of necessarily first in, first served, and they get all the money, and we've been there before. Janine might want to talk a bit more about the thinking of how, if council wanted to support this idea, how it would occur. And I think this needs to be a completely separate discussion from the idea that there's been a pilot for a siphon. It's a separate matter to this issue.
Dave, can you just flick through a few slides? Because I have got put one in here somewhere, going through that one. So yeah, this is sort of summarising, I guess, I think where we're sitting at the moment, which what the report is addressing is effectively a funding mechanism to establish, as Chris has said, I'm talking an opportunities fund. So that's $250,000 per annum, and from the general rate to be accumulated up to $1 million. Because of the recommended funding source of the general rate, it does mean that that would be available more broadly across council's business rather than just being thought about in terms of flood protection and drainage. So there are some advantages to broader thinking, I think, in terms of what this might enable us to do. So that's really all the report is addressing is that mechanism. Work that would still be required if council is supportive of that concept are a couple of things. I think there needs to be a policy developed that really clearly sets out the outcomes that are sought for that type of funding and investment. And then, as Chris has said, for each initiative, a business case would need to be developed for council consideration and approval. The business case really gives us that structure to consider costs, benefit, risks. And I know, with a particular pilot, there's been conversation around the commercialisation. The business case process is the way in which you can actually do that exploration so that council's making a fully informed decision, knowing all of those different elements in terms of an opportunity that might be before it. So we haven't done that decision-making process. We've got a concept around a fund, but it does need that structure to come along with it to make sure that it's really tightly managed to achieve the right outcomes that council's seeking.
I'm gonna continue to have us discuss this, but I did note that you have a number of slides, and I don't know if your intention was to work through all of them or work through them in relation to questions that come up. What was your?
I think what we've done is pulled together some additional slides around the particular areas of inquiry from council yesterday. And so obviously this is one of them. The other one is around the business case funding associated with Te Huia. So that's where we've got some more detail. Happy if you want to do, keep going down this pathway so that we're on a roll.
All right. I've got Councillor Mahuta, Councillor Cookson, and then Councillor Smith. Councillor Mahuta.
I'm in support of the opportunity of setting up the fund. While I'm in total support, things I've experienced at council is that we commission business cases and we have our best go at an R&D thing, but it's what happens after that. We don't deploy that knowledge again and again and again or commercialise it. So that last point is the most important point for me. And my examples are a lot of the expertise we've developed around the screw pumps and the fish-friendly devices. We're not selling that to anyone else who needs it as well, or, focusing in on that, honing in on the product. And the cappuccino, it's promised is going to help us clean out the lakes, and the technology works, but we've failed to deploy it because it's hard or not commercial. So while I support the proposition, I'd want to know we're doing it better than we used to do it. And one of the key things I think we should start speaking into is knowledge partners in the region. These have to be partnered outcomes so someone can take it to market, because that's not our day job. It would have been ag research ideally, or some other CRI. I don't really care who it is, but we're only responsible for part of the journey. The rest has to be taken up by the market or the industry. So, but support the premise. Kia ora.
Councillor Cookson.
Yeah, totally support what you said there, Councillor Mahuta. I think the establishment of a fund for all of the organisation would be far better than just for ICM. As I was talking, I just, an example, when I was speaking with Chris last night, and I think this puts real relevancy to it, is if a new technology came in, say solar or something like that, that at the moment we're using hard panels, but this one was more like a stick-on plastic on the wall. How do we work out if that technology fits us or not? And that's why a fund like that would be useful, that our council can move forward, put business case ready to go in annual plans and long-term plans far more quickly, that we can move with pace. So that's, I think, what we're asking for. So I hope all of council supports that sort of direction. And I hope the mechanisms of how that funding would be released would be very similar to how the Heritage Fund is run. That there is backups and diligence taking place of how that money is to released and then approved by all of council. So that's where I'd think, anyway, that mechanism is yet to be made and decided how it works, but I'd be hoping that's where we get the direction to go to.
Councillor Smith.
A very small point. I like the issue of accumulated up to 1 million. I'd like to see that provision be provided to top it up as and when required, so that it doesn't just 1 million and it all goes and everything falls over. So if this is successful, I want it to be enduring. So if we can just add something in there about the ability to top up.
So through the chair, that is the intention, but the million's effectively the cap. But if we draw down on it, then the next year we would put up to $250,000.
So does the recommendation that you probably have done actually provide for the future topping up? I'd like to see that encapsulated as the intent of this council.
That was definitely the intention behind this.
Thank you.
Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, so thanks for that clarification. This is great, the way that this has been clarified today. My view is, yes, I support it. It has enormous potential, and I emphasise the potential. The development of the policy and the business case will be absolutely critical to whether or not this works. And the business case template will need to be thought about carefully, because this is research and development. So it's a different sort of template. And in particular, I'd like to emphasize the need for partnerships and collaborations with other relevant agencies in our region in particular, including the CRIs, whatever they become,
Yes.
and whatever they become,
Mm.
and making sure that we really get the best brains available to address these issues from this fund. So yeah, I'll be voting in support of it and looking forward to hopefully some of us might be able to see some of the development of the policies and future business cases across the table. Thank you.
Jennifer.
Thanks. No, I agree with everything that has been said. Really good points raised. I think I also refer to it colloquially in my head as the agility fund, because it is so frustrating to wait for an annual plan and a long-term plan when you've got a good idea in the six, all of that. So, and I think that would really benefit local government, and as does innovation, because we're in a really squeezed place with high rates all over the place, and shared services are obviously a good opportunity that we have some mechanisms to explore, but when you've got partnerships and innovation being talked about, that can only be a good thing for local government. So I will support.
Councillor Hughes.
Yeah. Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I agree with what Tipper and Bruce have been saying about this, and some of what Robbie's comments were. My perspective, I see this fund as a core. If we set it up as a core fund, I would expect to see some commercial return from it. I just do not want to see us pouring money into a bucket, which gets drained every year, and it gets topped up again, and we see nothing for it. And I then ask the question of councils around the table, is this our core business? Is this what we are elected to deliver for our ratepayers? That is the question that drives my decision making. Nice to haves don't cut the mustard. People are not interested. They're interested in what they're getting for the dollars they spend. And this is a lot of blue sky, no guarantees of anything coming out the other end. If somebody can convert it into a commercial business case, then I certainly will support it.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, I have doubts about this. We've been through this process with the Economic Development Fund, which actually didn't work. The criteria weren't set well. We're committing to 250,000 a year for the next 4 years, effectively. So it's an ongoing cost. And I'm confused about the separate proposal for 250,000 for the water siphon trial, which we're being asked for in addition to this. So I'd like some clarity about how that fits into this proposal.
Can I just remind councillors, it was their request for staff to come back with a research and development fund in the first place. That's why it's here. The second part of it was probably born out of a discussion of an opportunity at the time with the water siphon trial or pilot. And I think that we need to separate it, because we came to the view as staff, if council think it's a good idea to do research and development, it should be council wide. I think some of the discussion that's just been had is a very sensible discussion of the caveats that would need to be around it. In terms of the issue that's been on the table that some councillors have asked us to look at, Janine, whereabouts have we got the siphon work and the sort of things?
So through the chair, it's referenced within the same discussion, but as per some of the information shared with councillors before, it's assumed that should that pilot proceed and the cost of it assumes exceeds the money that's going into this fund, then there's a recommendation to look at the prior year surplus to address that gap. But that is a separate funding decision, because I think you'd probably want to put it through some of these business case considerations.
Does that decision have to be made today?
No.
Because we don't know what.
No. I don't believe it does. I think there's the concept here of the R&D fund, opportunities or agility. I think I've referenced agility in the report as well. There's that conceptually, and then I think there's still work that needs to happen over any piloting of a water siphon.
Right. So that
and that would be
decision could be a
doesn't need,
future
I don't think
decision.
it's a decision that council's in a position to actually make today.
Right, yeah, because we don't have any specifics on that.
If I could just add to that, so there's some unknowns around that project, which we might not need to address today, but we could do if you wanted to. But I guess that the only caveat would be if council were to think that they might like to put into it, and it might not be through the Research and Development Fund, or it might be in excess of that, then the prior year surplus discussion needs to be considered.
We would, if that was something we wanted to entertain in the future, we would have to ensure that we leave sufficient prior year surplus to allow us to do that.
That would be my
should we
advice.
choose to. Okay. I just want to make sure that councillors are focused on what decisions must be made today versus what are some even potentially hypothetical. Yeah. So, all right. Councillor Nebo.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I support this. I just pretty much agree with all the conversations. Just would flag a bit of concern about expecting a commercial return, Chris, and where I'm going with that is that, you know, there may be a project that would significantly improve the environmental performance of some of our infrastructure, which clearly isn't going to give us a pure commercial return, but it is going to help offset a lot of the challenges that infrastructure is facing, you know. So
I'm thinking about that time we did was it an alteration to the McEwen's pump or something to try to make it fish friendly? Yeah. Because that's something that this could help, right?
Yeah.
And
I think sorry, Stu, I think one of the considerations would be co-funding.
Yeah.
So you're actually getting more.
I think as Bruce said, the devil's in the detail in terms of the way
Yeah,
this is all drawn up. So yeah.
All right. So I'm hearing general support for an R&D fund that has the enduring nature to it, that has a very firm framework around it, that explores commercialization where that's appropriate given the technology we might be considering, and how we partner with others who do R&D as their daily. Right? So this is what I'm hearing. If there is a view that is fundamentally different than what I just summarized, that's what I'd like to now hear. Okay? Or else you can just say, yeah, that's cool.
Just
I've got Councillor Clarkson, Nicol Smith, and Dunbar Smith. But I want to focus that conversation.
Yeah, it's somewhat following on from the chair's comments. I mean, I accept the reservations that Ben has outlined and Chris has outlined, but the point is this is a stepwise progressive process. And all we're signing on today to really is to start it and check it along the way. So, you know, I absolutely agree with some of the comments from the reservations. Yeah.
But we'll work through that devilish detail, won't we? In the development of the framework, should this progress?
Yes, so the thought bubble that I think the chair can probably see going across my face is the chicken and egg situation here of the concept and needing to do some work in terms of the development of that and all of the controls with actually making a funding provision this year for it. And whether there's comfort in the inclusion of that 250 straight off the bat, or whether there's some more work that council's wanting or needing to see done first to shore up that request for funding.
Is it possible to say, to make a decision today that says, with a framework that we are comfortable with, we want the inclusion of the 250, So it gives us an opportunity to bring that framework back. Can we do that today?
No, so through the chair today or this week, we're setting the budget, including the rating impacts. So the 250 needs to be either in or out of the decision. Yeah. Yeah,
Can't
it
use it
certainly won't be
until- yeah.
used until that other work
Yes.
is done.
Great.
I guess to not do it means there's a 12-month delay in being able to do anything. Yeah, but just.
All right. Again, I think we're all on the
Yeah.
same page here.
Yeah.
So unless
There was-
Councillor Nicol Smith and Dunbar Smith and Marr, unless there is some fundamental difference, do we need to speak? Okay. So I need you, Mike.
Ben noted the failure of the economic development, and it's not the same insofar as people came to us with their proposals, which gave benefit to certain aspects of the region. I see this fund as being driven by the council to benefit its processes and work and so on, and you're gaining efficiencies for council.
Yeah.
And then we look for partners and others to come into the fold rather than them coming to us. So I see it as the opposite, and this enables council to be the nimble, as we talked about earlier with Greg. And so, yeah, I think we need to make that difference. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Councillor Marr, something different?
Yes, just an impact on staff capability and capacity. Yeah, Janine, so you know where I'm going, to actually develop framework for all this without touching the 250.
Yes, sitting here thinking, great idea, Janine, it not just being flood protection and drainage, but then whose lap does that land in? This is not something that we currently really have expertise in. Certainly, I can use some of my team for, I guess, literature review and looking for some, examples of where this may be. But they are, the level of expertise that's needed is probably something that would need external support just to make sure that we've got things right on it.
All right. What do we got? I still have, Ben, have you got something else you want?
Yes. Two points. One, this is coming out of savings this year.
Not.
This is the accumulated savings was the energy strategy, R&D, and
Oh,
accumulated
so
savings.
it's within the chief executive's submission.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So the question is the 250 automatically going to happen each year till we get to the million? That's a clarification we need to decide, because we've got the money this year, we don't have it for futures. And when is it?
No, just to clarify that.
So through the chair, effectively the 250,000 would become part of our budget baseline. So that would then be rated every year for the first 4 years of 250,000. And then if the fund is drawn down on, then whatever rate is required within 250,000 to keep it at the million. Once you've made the decision to include this in your budget, it's in that baseline, and so it won't be a further increase in subsequent years.
No, but we're effectively setting up $1 million fund over 4 years. We're not setting up a $250,000 fund. So I think, yeah, we don't necessarily have the funds. And also the question is, when's it going to be available? Is it June 2026? These are questions we don't know the answers to. I don't mind putting 250 in for a one-off to get the thing up and running. I don't really necessarily agree to automatic renewal. Well, no, Janine's just saying it would automatically come in the budget each year till you get to the million.
Yeah.
Can I just try and clarify that as I understand it? Starting from July 1, $250,000 would be put into a fund that will accumulate until anything's drawn down out of a decision's made through a business case and going through a policy process, whatever that is, to approve something, to be able to draw down on it. If there's a drawdown on it, there would be, and it's got to $1 million, if there's a drawdown on it, it will be topped up until it gets back to $1 million. But it doesn't have to get to $1 million before it has its first drawdown. Now, I just want to,
But it would have to get through the business case and the framework that's going to be set up in order to be drawn
So
down.
for instance, once it's set up, in theory, next year, if the policy's in place and there's a business case put together and it came to whatever the decision-making process is within that policy, next year, up to $250,000, there could be a case put. I'm just checking with the Councillor Dunbar-Smith. Is that what you were asking?
Just asking, are we committing to 250 a year for the next 4 years?
Yes, but you can cut
There-
it
there's a
any
difference
year.
between committing to it, but
And
any
actually
future
doing it.
council can stop
Yeah.
it through
The
each
annual
of these
plan
annual
process.
processes.
All right. Again, I think we've summarized the view here. So I would like to move us on to the next topic to talk about, okay?
I just want to take issue with something that Councillor Smith said. He said this fund is for the benefit of council. It's not. As far as I'm concerned, if it's going to be of any benefit to anyone, it's the ratepayers. That's who should
It's the
benefit.
benefit of council. It is
There's a
to the
subtle
benefit of
difference between-
ratepayers.
There is a subtle
Yes.
difference.
I understood what you meant, Councillor Smith. All right, I really want to,
Just quickly, when it comes back around again, Janine, I don't doubt that other councils have done this to some degree. So could we look at those who might have a maturer model?
Yeah.
And no, just really keen on the progress. Thank you for putting it up, Hilda.
great.
Madam Chair, may I just get some
Yes.
clarity? I just have a real concern. Obviously, we're another FTE to actually even put this in place. So is that going to come to us as a business case or how's, and is that $130,000? We looked at a process management extra FTE at 130,000. Is that the type of thing that's going to happen here?
So through the chair, I think there is effort and cost associated with the development of a policy and a framework. Once it's beyond that, I don't think that there's an ongoing cost here at all. And I wouldn't say that it was an FTE. I think there is a period of effort to actually establish the notion and to get the settings right, that this is actually going to adequately support council. I think as Councillor Mahuta said, the starting point will be a reach out across the network in terms of has anyone done this? Is it working? So there is staff time potentially with the need to supplement that with some external advice and support as well, but not to the extent of time role.
I know it's a piece of string, but ballpark. So like, I'm looking at, we're going to spend 100,000 to set up a framework for a $250,000 fund.
50,000 is always a good round number.
Okay.
And sorry, Janine, just with my C hat on, because I can see where the question is, and where is that likely to be asked for, or do we have provision for it?
So it is not currently provisioned within any of the numbers that we have provided.
All right. I want to move on. What's the next, huh? No, we're going to talk about all of these things.
And so
And then
through
we're
Chair,
going to take a break.
Yeah, and probably just need to do some work around the resolutions in relation to this to make sure that we're reflecting back some of the points that have been made and the clarification that's sought and the decisions taken.
Okay, so we've dealt with that. We had the other thing in the chief executive's submission around the the KPI, the energy strategy. Did anybody want to talk to that? Because that was additional.
Can you just remind me that it's actually required from government to do the strategy, or is it just something? So what's the difference between a strategy and an inventory? Because I think we've done the inventory, haven't we?
We have done the inventory.
And so knowing that the stuff is out there, but we need a strategy. You know, can you give me a 101 on it, please?
I might ask Tracy if she might be able to assist with that, but we have a current regional energy strategy which is kind of somewhat out of date, and that
2008, I think it was.
and that clearly helped with some direction on to harness the best out of the energy resources and its use in the region. What we might need, like policy settings and whatever, which probably served its purpose. And Tracy, I won't go any further than that. Leave it to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Chief Executive. So we had completed a regional energy inventory. Oh, sorry, need to shout. Sorry, can you hear me now? Wonderful. So we completed a regional energy inventory December 2023. I think we brought that to Council March last year. Got that signed off. That was really a stock take of where we're at. As our Chair and Chief Executive said, the regional energy strategy that we had was at a different time and had different levers and suggested different interventions. We knew at the time that the government was developing a national energy strategy, and we wanted to be masters of our own destiny as opposed to being told what to do with that. We did have some levers that we can pull, and we're very aware that a lot of energy companies deal with the regional council because of who we are and what we do in a regulatory frame, as well as policy development. It was looking at those opportunities also in an economic development space, so not just related to statutory functions, but actually the wider functions of the regional council. What we did, because everybody, strangely enough, has a point of view about energy, is let's get the inventory in place so we actually know what it is. We've also had Blair just do a February 2025 update because we know our energy market's pretty dynamic. Staff were going to do what I classified as a desktop study, a desktop strategy, which would be very scant, very minimalistic, and basically would occur as and when capacity of key staff was available. That's how we had always intended to approach the strategy this year. It was not a priority work program. It was still found to be important, but strangely enough, RM reform and our response to that was felt to be more important, and to make sure we had staff available to do that. What we have looked at is if we were asked to do an energy strategy, that was more than a desktop. What have we got? What do we think? Which is really, it wouldn't have, I don't believe, that energy strategy wouldn't have the heft and mana, a desktop strategy, to engage with our key energy providers, to provide direction for our territorial authorities who are also wanting to, I would say, own more of the space than perhaps some of their roles and responsibilities enable, because I think some of those sit with us. We said to do an energy strategy that would have that mana, have that heft with our energy providers, with government. We would be looking at, Janine said 50,000 is a good number, 150 is a good number in terms of
Finance
policy. But putting something together and running a process whereby we are doing this in partnership with some of those key energy providers of the now and the future, as well as project management, because we don't have a lot of people lurking about wanting to do project management and policy and strategy work. So what I do just want to say is there will be a product at the end of the year that will be, I would say, a very minimalistic desktop version.
how council wants to use that to have the conversations that we need to have with some of these key players. It will enable the level of conversation we can have. Ben.
Yeah, I want to say I'm opposed to spending this 150,000. I want to reduce rates, not increase them. The genesis of this was that the government was going to be introducing a national energy strategy. So we did the energy inventory so that could inform them about what was in our region. And it was a great document, 90-page document, well done by staff. The government's now decided it's not prioritising a national energy strategy, so there's less need for a regional energy strategy moving forward, and that the energy inventory we've got can inform the spatial planning. So when this was originally discussed, it came up as a CE KPI when the national energy strategy was sitting on the table. So I think it's moved forward simply because it's sitting as a KPI for the CE. And when we originally discussed it with you, it wasn't going to cost anything. It was going to be the internal energy strategy. The other thing is that in dealing with the energy sector, dealing with the generators, they actually don't like someone telling them what a strategy is going to be, and they're very competitive. They don't want to say this is where the wind farm's going to be and this is solar energy here, because everyone's going to buy up the same sorts of farms. So it's not necessarily something that's easy for council to do. So I would just say there's 150,000 you can save.
Councillor Mahuta.
No, I think Ben's brought it up. I just wanted to say that MB is the lead agency. What's their commitment to helping us do something with this? But I do understand why we need one, because we are the powerhouse of the country, of the North Island anyway. So wanting to sit with us, having really great information so we can deploy, but knowing that there's a Crown agency more responsible than us. I just don't want to pay twice for the same effort.
So just checking again, does this 150, is the proposal that this comes out of prior year surplus, or is this a separate rated thing? Is there an opportunity for it to come out of prior year surplus? Just noting we don't want rates to go up, just.
So through the chair, if it's a one-off cost, then there would be the opportunity to consider it through the prior year surplus. At the moment, we've assumed that it's included within the annual plan budget.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure that we have that option in our minds.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Nicol.
Thanks for that, Chair Story. I do think that this isn't an ongoing piece, and so could be considered under prior year surplus. My concern is, or my reasoning that I bring to this, because I do support the finishing of an energy strategy for the region, is that we said in our strategic direction 3 years ago, goals for success by 2025, deliver an updated energy strategy. And I would like to deliver on the things we say we're going to do. The inventory happened quite some time ago now. It was part of a KPI in the first part of this triennium. I'm mindful, I don't want to lose the value of that inventory over time by having done it, putting it all on the shelf, and then having to pick it up again, maybe when central government feels like it. I mean, I find it ridiculous that central government is going for growth and not prioritising the energy strategy. It's just silly. I think it's what the stats I've got in my head is like, there's like 99.6% correlation between energy and GDP. So if that's what they want, I just don't get the not prioritisation part of it. So while we have the inventory current, while we are the central powerhouse of the North Island and, you know, a large part of New Zealand's energy contribution, it feels like the type of thing that we should be really good at. And we know we have spatial planning work underway. So simply an inventory for that will still mean extra work to make that a layer on the spatial plan, I would imagine. So keeping this going, I just think it's consistent with everything else we're funding. There's also a whole lot of commentary I see around the place of you know, where should solar go? Should it go on the farms and what kind of class of land? Should it go on commercial buildings? A bit of direction, a bit of certainty for developers and business, at least from us, since they're not getting it elsewhere, would be useful. I have advocated for a kind of an 80-20 rule in the past. You know, this does not have to be the best energy strategy and New Zealand has ever come up with, you know, in any part of it. But having something to be delivered that's a little bit more than the desktop, but more would just be so in line with what we're doing. So I think if we are a growing region, energy use will grow. We hear signals that energy is in winter a real problem. I think there's a lot of benefits to this, up to this amount being spent, to give some more certainty in an uncertain world and some guidance as to what we want to see in the Waikato and where, so that we grow smart and not just wherever. I'll just leave it there.
All right. I wanted to take a little biology break, but just foreshadowing. We've still got a Tahuya conversation to have. We've got the salary and performance remuneration conversation to have, and we have the priority or surplus conversation to have. So we will take a very short break, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back, have those 3 conversations, then we'll take another break, or we make final decisions. All right, so we will adjourn the meeting. It is 11:19.